What's up everyone, Dave the Data Dude. Today we're going to be talking about how we can manipulate columns, how we can create columns, how we can do arithmetic on columns, and a couple other options we have with the columns themselves, such as the names and replacing parts of a column. So let's go ahead and jump into our code. So first thing we're going to do is import pandas as BP. We're going to import the Pokemon CSV file into our df variable as we've been doing. And then we're going to just check to make sure everything looks good, and it does. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to talk about making a new column and what that looks like. So to make a new column in pandas, all you have to do is you have to do a open bracket, tick, and then whatever you want your column to be named. So we're going to do this, call this one test, and we're just going to make it 0. It doesn't matter at this point. So essentially what it's going to do is it's going to look and see in your data frame that you do not have a column named test. So it's going to make a new column named test for you. It's automatically going to do that. You don't have to do anything extra special. You just have to tell it what it's supposed to equal. So when you do that, you can see that your data frame now has a new column named test with the information that you told it to have. Okay? So this is all zeros because that's what we set it to be equal to all throughout. So that's the very basic way that you create a column in pandas. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of this, and we're just going to re-import our data frame because we're not really interested in doing any drops or anything like that. We'll get into that a little bit later. So we're just going to have our data frame as it was and as is from the beginning. So another neat thing that you can do is you can create a column based on the data within each row. So we're going to name this one total attack, right? So this is just going to be df, and then the name of the column attack. So we're taking this column and we're adding df, and we're going to add it to sp.atk. So all this is doing is it's making a new column because we don't have a column called total attack created. It's going to look at our data frame and say, okay, I know attack column exists and I know special attack column exists, and all they want to do is add them together. So we do that, and then we can see that it's 114, which is special attack 65 and attack 49 added together. Simply E equals total attack of 114. And you can do that for anything. You can do special defense, special defense, things like that. Now, what would happen if we tried to add a, if for whatever reason you wanted to add name to attack? We'll just see what happens if we do that. So name, we'll just do testing mixed values. So that basically we're testing if it's between a string and an integer, what's it going to do? So we're going to say df.name plus df attack, right? Super simple. What's it going to do? Oh, it doesn't like it because it can't work between a string and an integer. So what would happen though if we came in here and for attack we said str for string? Right, so we just essentially cast that as string, and it's going to make it look really weird, and it's not going to be really what we want. So, this is just to show you that you can, try and mess around with it if you really feel like you need to try and merge them together. You can see here I was able to simply cast the attack column as a string and then add them together. So you can work with it a little bit to get what you're looking for. So. Just something to be aware of, that if it's between an int and a string, you have to make sure that they're all the same type in order to add them together or subtract them or anything like that. But we're going to look at what happens if we just add a string and a string together. What happens if we do that? So this is already just a string and a string. We're going to add those together. We see that testing mix is now Bulbasaur grass. Right? Bulbasaur grass, Ivysaur grass, Charmander fire, and it just adds them together. Python, pandas really in general knows if you got strings and you add them together, it just makes the string, it just adds the string together if you want to think of it like that, but basically just putting them together. So this is how we do just using columns and making a new column based on information from our current data. So let's go ahead and just get rid of all of these. We'll import our pandas data frame again as it was, and now you can see our data is back to the beginning of what it started at. Now, let's say that, you know, in our specific example, we might not necessarily have a reason to do this, but let's say we wanted to double attack. Maybe you've got inventory or sales that you want to do, you want to mark up the price twice as much, you know, I don't know, whatever you want to do. So for us, what we're going to do is we're just going to update a column. We're going to update the HP column, and we're going to set it to equal df HP for the column that we're referencing times 2. So essentially, we're just going to want to double the HP in our HP column and replace that column with the new data. So pay attention to how I did this. I said this column, which already exists, equals what? It's going to equal our HP column times 2. This is important to know that you can update a table in this manner, because in your day-to-day analytics, you might have, for example, like I said, the manager wants the price of something to be increased by so much. So you need to just simply increase your sales or your price column by however much your manager wants to increase it by. So we increased it by, you know, 100%, but, you know, if you wanted to do, you know, 1.2%, you can increase it by 20% doing that. So that's just how you do multiplication on a column and increase an existing column. The same thing would have worked if we had just said HP, you know, updated maybe. Okay? So now it's doubled again, right? Or well, not doubled, but now it's increased by 20% from 90. Because that's what it was saved to, right? Because we're updating our column as we're moving along. So it saved the fact that we increased HP by 2 or 2 times over. And then over here in our new column we created, it said, okay, so it's 90 now. Now you want 20% increase on HP in this HP updated column for 108. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and just set our data frame back to the beginning as it was, and see that we have everything reset to the very beginning. So the next thing we are going to look at is we are going to look at the actual columns within our data frame, and you can see what your columns are called by just doing .columns, right? And this is important to know because sometimes you'll be importing data and you might have a couple spaces in your column name that you didn't know existed. You might have something in there that you don't know is there, but doing this, you'll be able to see the actual text value of your columns to update them and things that you might need. Now, let's say that for our specific example, we updated or we downloaded this data and we see that there's a dot in these SP dot defense and whatnot. We don't want that in our data. So all we have to do is we have to write a code that will remove or replace those dots. So you can simply say df.columns, so give us all of the columns that are in our data frame, equals df.columns.string.replace the period or the dot with a empty string. Like, so there's nothing there, just replace it with nothing essentially. So we do that. You're going to get this warning. Sometimes you get warnings sometimes for things being degraded or getting rid of them and things like that. For now, we're not going to worry about that for right now. We just know that at this point it got rid of our dots in our columns so that we can have our data columns not have the periods in them, and we just replaced it with this simple line of code. And we'll talk about replace more later. Just know that this is a way that you can replace your columns should you need to going forward in your own program. So let's go ahead and get rid of this, pandas df, and start over. So now everything's gone back to the way that it was. Now, if you wanted to limit your columns to only have a certain amount of, like, you only wanted a certain column, certain columns. So we could simply say equals df space or bracket we'll say we want this one and we want name, right? So now when we look at our columns, we only have these two columns. Now this is important to note and probably to remember, because in the future, I can almost guarantee you that you are going to make columns for arithmetic, or you're going to make columns for comparisons and things like that. That's going to make your table or your data frame look really ugly with a bunch of stuff that your end users are not going to want to see. So this is a way to kind of reel in your data frame to only the columns that you need to report. Remember how we were talking about the attack increase by 20%, the update, HP, things like that. They wouldn't need to see all that. You would just want them to see the updated HP. So you might just want to limit it to, the number, name, and then HP updated. And that is how you would do that. Just data frame equals df, double brackets, and then all of the names of the columns that you want separated by a comma. Okay? So the last thing we're going to look at is we're just going to look at how to drop a column. So we're going to come in here and reset our data to equal what it was to begin with. And we're going to just say df.drop. And then we're going to just name the column that we want to drop, name. So we just want to drop, well, no, let's keep that one. We're going to drop that column, the hashtag column, and we're going to say axis equals 1. So what we just did there was we just dropped that hash column because we might not need it, we might not want it. There's reasons that you can use this further in analytics when you're trying to do other things. Like when you're trying to chain some functions together, this is how you would do that. So essentially you just dropped the hashtag column, you could drop the name column, and don't be confused when the hashtag shows back up, it's because we didn't save it right here we didn't save the data frame to the new data frame. That's why the hashtag shows back up right here. So don't be confused when you see that. So we dropped the name, axis equals 1, right? Because that's axis equals 1 means columns in pandas. So what would happen, we always have been talking about how we can drop multiple things at once. But when you do, you have to separate them by brackets. So let's go ahead and separate name and hashtag in here and see if we can drop both columns at the same time. And we can. Okay? So you can drop multiple columns at the same time. Just say df.drop and then put in brackets the column that you want to drop, comma, axis equals 1. Okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We got a real quick introduction to how to manipulate our columns, adding columns, taking away columns, limiting our columns, and how to do some basic arithmetic on our columns and how to do arithmetic between our columns. Like and subscribe. Let us know if you have any questions in the comments. Also, if there's anything that you'd like to see so that we can keep bringing you quality content that you enjoy. Thank you very much.